everyone. My name is Heather Hurt with the NRW, where nerds rule the world, and I'm here today with filmmaker and doing his graphic novel debut, Stephen S. DeKnight. I want to say McKnight, but I don't know why. DeKnight. And the co-creator, many of you who are comics fans who watch this channel, you will know co-creator of Jessica Jones, Michael Gaydos. How are you gentlemen doing today?
We're very good.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Actually, Stephen, I want to ask you even before we start, what is DeKnight? What is the background your name come from?
Interesting story. We'll start off with an interesting story because people always ask me, when you moved to Los Angeles, did you change your name, to make it sound better? And I said, no, this is the name I grew up with. Strangely enough, it is made up, but I didn't make it up. My father was adopted, and his original name was Doran, and he was adopted by a family in Wisconsin called Rasmussen. So I was almost Steve Rasmussen, but Steve Rasmussen, heating and plumbing. It would have been a completely different career. But my dad never liked his adopted family. So as soon as he was old enough, he changed his name and he picked DeKnight out of the air because he thought it sounded like a doctor. So that's the story behind my name.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I do like that you had your fake position like in your head all set up.
One more interesting thing about my name is I must have had some kind of mental break because my name is actually DE space KNIGHT.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in the early 2000s, I accidentally left out the space and just completely forgot that my name had a space in it.
Okay.
So technically on my passport, there's a space because it has to match my exact government records, but in all my credits, there's no space.
And how has that affected you?
Well, I discovered at one point it affected me because every time I would return into the country, I would get flagged and have to go have a conversation because something wasn't matching up. Since then, we apparently have cleared it up.
Yeah.
But besides that, I apparently forgot how to spell my name.
Oh, okay. As someone who also has a hyphenated name, I totally understand. I totally get it. Well, I don't even have to, I have 20 minutes with these guys. I don't even need to ask any questions. So,
Yeah.
But what we are really here to talk about today is the Comixology original graphic novel, Beneath, which these two wonderful gentlemen created. I got to read it. It was a lot of fun. It came out as of this recording about a month ago in August. I was speaking to Michael a little bit before. Stephen, how have you been feeling since the release?
Great. I mean, I love the book. It was a passion project. I still can't believe we got Michael to come in and do it. When my editor, Allison O'Toole, called up and said, "Wait, what do you think about Michael Gaydos?" My first reaction was, we'll never get him. Are you kidding me? And, Michael can speak to it, but he was available and interested in doing a horror comic. And it just all fell together. But the book would not be nearly as successful or beautiful without Michael's just amazing work.
Absolutely. And once again, I got a couple of minutes with Michael before I started this, but Michael, we were talking about that art style, which is different from, I'm a comic book retailer by trade. So, I know the comic world a little bit, or pretend to, at least. It's on my business card. This is a little bit different than what you normally do. It's not like miles different, but there's a little bit of a different style in this book than your typical action work. What did you do differently? What were you looking for when you were doing Beneath?
Yeah. Well, I think as an illustrator, you want to look at projects that make you look at things in a different way. And so I thought this was a perfect project for me in that way. And, I loved what Stephen, was putting, forth with the idea. And all of a sudden, I started coming up with ideas of, what I can do and, how I wanted to make this very movie-like. And so I changed a little things. I have never done horror per se. I have done a lot of like role-playing game illustrations, which are horror related. So I used a lot of the tools that I have been using in that type of illustration for this. So I thought that would be a good fit for it. So
Absolutely. And let's talk about that expression a little bit. This did feel English. This did feel very very creature feature. Which is something that y'all both said, that Stephen, you said in the afterword, was kind of the goal.
Yeah.
Was that a plan? Was that planned for you as a filmmaker making his debut in comics, or was that just a pleasant surprise that Michael kind of took this script and turned it into that?
Yeah, a little of both, really. I actually conceived this as a movie about 5 or 6 years ago, when I met with Universal to talk about they were rebooting their classic monster library. And this was a couple of years before Invisible Man came out. And they gave me, all their old movies and said, but the big ones are taken, So don't even look at Frankenstein or Creature from the Black Lagoon or any of that. And I had seen all these movies throughout my lifetime, and one called The Mole People caught my eye. And it's anybody who remembers it's back in the 1930s when it was shot. It's kind of like Lost Horizons with monsters. These people discover this underground utopian society in the mountains, except their slaves are these mole people. And these mole people are just in the background, lugging stuff around and carrying shit, through the movie until the third act, when they revolt and go bananas and start killing everybody. So I thought, well, that's interesting. We could do a really modern take on that. And so I kind of put together this idea, taking inspiration from all the movies and the stuff that I loved. One of the big ones, Assault on Precinct 13, John Carpenter's movie. So I thought, well, let's do a contained, these group of people together that don't get along, forced to work together to survive the night when these creatures attack. So that was really the way I was approaching it. And whenever I approach writing a graphic novel, this is my first, I have another one coming out at the end of the year with humanoids, I'm very much a 3-act structure guy. So that lends itself to a propulsive storytelling engine. And it also gives that feeling of a movie just because of the way it's designed. And then Michael came in and was just the icing on top of the cake.
Well, thank you. It really came together beautifully. But one thing that really struck me, as someone who has read a couple too many comics in her lifetime, and especially with modern day superhero comics being at the forefront, read more indie comics, guys. Just read more indie comics. But with that, you see these large panels. You see these, multi-page panels. You see a lot of action. One of the things that really caught me about this book is a lot of it is facial. You don't have a lot of huge action sequences, even though, Michael, you were, and we'll get into this in a second, you were mentioning that Comixology, due to the digital format, it requires a little bit more tweaking than traditional comic books.
Yeah.
But why was the face so important for you when you were drawing up the story?
With all my work, it's about expression, and it is about human expression. And I go through every script and I play act myself. Each character before I may pick a model or somebody like that, and it is so important for me to get the correct expression for each panel, to help move it, because that's the motion. that's the emotion, for the story. And with this book too, what I liked about it was, it was very confined. So I could really get close-ups, or I can really, make things that, oh yeah, you are very much in a confined space, and, it's uncomfortable sometimes. So, that, I really enjoyed. But yeah, expression and, human behavior and how people interact is very important to me. And I mean, it's always fascinated me. I love just people watching. So, it really helps in, getting, how people interact. So.
Yeah. And Michael really hits on something, is that for me, I grew up as a kid in the heyday of Stephen King, just devouring all of his stuff. And the great thing about King is characters. His characters are so alive, and then he drops them into an incredible situation. And that's really what I strive for. And Michael really, really gets it, is that particularly with Beneath, it's the character work that makes the story work. Without all of that character stuff, who cares about the creatures, really? And what I loved about what Michael brought to this is just, those juicy close-ups and seeing emotion on the face. It was just fantastic.
Well, yeah, you need to be invested in these characters. You need to have some camaraderie with them, or some type of you feel what they feel. You can put yourself in their place. So that's what is very important to me. So.
And just to touch on it very quickly, you also made the comment, I've never heard this before. I've talked to a couple of creatives for Comixology. You said that it's also different to draw for the digital space and regulation, just because of how you have to portray it. Can you just touch on what the difference is between a traditional comic and a digital?
Well, I think, they wanted more, actual square rectangular panels. You can't have anything that has, huge angles, or, splashes that, completely, go off screen, or panels within panels and stuff like that, which, I guess for the viewing purpose, when you see it on the tablet or on the computer, it makes it more difficult to follow. So, which I didn't mind. I mean, it's kind of nice to have something structured to that you have to follow. So, and make it work that way. So it was just another challenge for me. So.
Awesome. And once again, you could see it. It was a very interesting way to look at a comic. I'm just so used to those big splashes, those action sequences. I do want to talk a little bit about the only larger panels were about the Aztecal. I'm going to say that. I'm going to try my hardest to say it right. I'm sorry, guys. I say everything wrong. The myth that was behind this, and you saw these beautiful. The book itself is very monotone, two color, purposefully, of course. Yeah. But then you have these beautiful images when they're talking about this myth. So I have to ask, Stephen, was that myth real? I couldn't find any reference to it, so that's why I got to ask.
Yes and no. I mean, the basic mythology of the time and place and the gods, yes. The myth about the Aztecs going underground, no, that was just kind of made up. And that really came about because I had read an article about how a lot of Mexico City was built on top of the Aztec Empire. And that, and a lot of it kind of extended into Texas before, the United States seized that territory. And I just thought, well, that just sounds cool and kind of relevant to the whole immigration issue these days.
Mm-hmm.
I love a good genre story that also touches on, I always think about the classic original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where the Red Scare was, you didn't know if your neighbor was really your neighbor. And I thought, well, this is just a perfect little tale. And with that section, when the myth is revealed, I got the pages from Michael, which were nothing like I imagined, and way cooler, way cooler. I was
nothing like I imagined.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. It was almost psychedelic. I loved it.
Yeah, I came upon, I left that for a little bit later in the book, and because I just did not know how to approach it. So I just kind of just threw myself into it and, just started playing and experimenting and stuff like that. And I came upon something that I really liked, and it's like, oh, this is cool. And I mean, that's one of my favorite sections of the book. And it's really, I think it doesn't, it's not too far from what the rest of the book is, but it still has that kind of extra just weirdness to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And once again, it's a complete contrast of the entire book.
Yeah.
So it's you were saying that you found a couple things. What were your inspiration for those panels?
I was just looking at a lot of what Stephen was saying about the past and about the heritage of Mexico City and the monuments there and stuff like that, and just I was finding images and just trying to make it a different color palette, because gold was a big thing. So I wanted to make it, very splashy in a little way. And I mean, it has, that gold texture to it that goes through around it. But in a primitive way too. So it just is something that really is very different from the rest of the book.
Yes. And it's beautiful. It's probably, I'm going to say this, it's the most standoutish part of the story. I'm just going to say.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, last question. And Stephen, I'm going to kind of put this on you. I'm sorry, all that pressure. One of the things that you said in your afterword is that one of the big things that you love about horror is that there's always a moral or a reference, or it takes today and puts it into a fictional space. And you were mentioning the Red Scare, stuff like that. But with Beneath, you wanted it to be inward, not external.
Yeah.
Why did you want to take the point of view of what man does to man versus, the more traditional elements of horror?
Yeah, well, I think what man does to man is essential to horror. Some of the best horror really comes from that. I mean, look, one of the first things that comes to mind, of course, is a Human Centipede. I mean,
that's one that just comes to mind. I'm concerned, but
yeah, well, I mean, the horrors that man inflicts on man. And even if you go back to the classics, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, all of them had that human element. Like with Dracula, I mean, the undertones were really about lust and repressed sexuality. And, obviously Frankenstein was the thirst for knowledge above any sort of morality or ethics. And, that it obviously bleeds into the creature features of the 50s, like, Godzilla, the horrors of atomic weapons and radiation. Which comes from man, not from animal. So I think there's a long storied history of, that question in a good piece of horror, who's the real monster? And almost always it's the humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also it just, the setup for this, that we're in this awful place, this for-profit detention center that's closing down, and people forced to be together that hate each other. And to see how that unfolds is just kind of the classic setup.
Yeah. When you're the only people left, you see, how people really are, So.
Exactly. I mean, I think of Romero's Dawn of the Dead, perfect example, where the real monsters are the humans.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. Beneath is a great story. It is a Comixology original. So I'm sorry, guys. Y'all know me. I'm always going to say hit up your local comic shop. But in this case, make sure to check it out online.
Well, next year, right?
Yeah.
It's coming out in 2025 in actual form.
Okay. All right.
From our friends at Dark Horse. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. Dark Horse is great about doing that. They've done a lot of really good books where they transition them from digital, and that's awesome. So,
so
shout out.
They publish. They do a wonderful job publishing. So.
Absolutely. So from Dark Horse, if y'all are original comic book fans like me, hit up your local comic shop. 2025. We'll have the dates down below. We'll give you some real stuff. But in the meantime, make sure to check it out on Comixology and digital. It's available right now for Prime members. You can read it for free. You can definitely check it out. So take a look. Stephen S. DeKnight, hyphen night.
Space Night.
And Michael Gaydos, thank you guys so much for your time. And thank you, the audience. Like, share, subscribe, all the things down below. Bye, guys.
All right. Thanks
so much.